This video is only part of an unpaid, unbiased, in-depth review from an average rider's perspective, so check out the rest in the link below at thegoodride.com. If this video helps, please consider subscribing and buying through our links, or even better, become a member on YouTube or Patreon. You'll get exclusive access to video review shorts as we test gear, along with a lot of other perks. So thanks for watching, and I hope this review helps. Welcome to The Good Ride. I'm James Beastie, and I'm just being me in a world that isn't. This is the Nidecker Escape. Next to it is the Escape Plus and the Thruster. I rode this primarily with Burton Kendos and Union Atlas, but got on some other bindings from Nidecker as well, like the K-On, and got this in a decent amount of conditions, some pretty good soft powdery snow, to some decent powder, to some good groomers, and a little bit of that in-betweenish stuff that I often have to test in. And to give you a short summary, this Escape Plus is reasonably priced, but reasonably priced for advanced to expert riders that like old school, full camber, but still want a decent amount of setback on board. Not as much as the Escape Plus that has more setback, or the Thruster that has a little bit more than that, but still decent amount. And it's got that technical, poppy, full camber feel, a flex personality that's great in all conditions, never gets cranky, too bucky or too bouncy, and just has this nice camber feel for old school riders. And it sure does love to turn. Now, when it comes to sizing, this 59 felt good, especially for my weight, but I would have liked the 56 because it would just match up a little better with my boot size. And these days I just like riding about a 56, 55 to 57 for an all mountain board, but you know, all depends on the width and design, etc. But I felt like it fit me pretty well. And the same goes with the Escape Plus and the Thruster. I would have liked to have gone one size down with each for my boot size, even though I'd probably feel a touch on the heavy side for it weight-wise. And I'm 5'10", 185 to 190, and size 9 boots. Now, when it comes to shape, this has a slight bit of taper, but you really don't feel it on groomers. You don't even really feel it too much in powder, but it's nice to have it there because millimeters can matter in snowboarding. This camber profile, it's just full on camber. I laid it down on the table right before the review for just a second take after initially getting it and looking at it. This just looks like full on camber and definitely feels like that on snow. It's just a board that, even though it has like a little setback on side cut compared to a lot of all mountain boards, it just feels locked in and technical. You've got to be on your game here. It's not an easy board to skid turns, neither is the Escape Plus. The Thruster is a little easier just because of that lifted sides and the nose, but still more on the technical side, the advanced expert side of things. Don't let this price point fool you. I wouldn't suggest this to a beginner or intermediate because I went through this before in the past, the full camber learning phase, and that's just not fun. It's so much easier to learn on other boards these days. So look for something that has a lifted nose and tail, a hybrid camber version of this in Nidecker's line. That would be much better for you if you're a beginner intermediate. But if you're advanced expert on a budget, this is just great. It doesn't feel washy in the tail. It tracks well, one foot's well off the chair, tracks well down a long flat cat track or a traverse. And overall, it's just got that old school camber, directional but not tapered feel. Now, when it comes to edge hold, there's good grip. It's very competent in hard snow, and I had no problem there. All these boards do a good job. I would say the Escape Plus, I felt like probably had the best edge hold of the three, but just like, we're just talking shades of great. The Thruster maybe a little less, the Escape about the same as the Escape Plus. Let's talk flex here. The Escape is softer than the Escape Plus, and overall there's a good flex and there's good snap back, but you get a lot more out of the Escape Plus. In the center here, it's medium stiff to stiff. Then you get in the nose, it's definitely softer. Then you look at the tail, and there's a little bit of give in the tail, more so than the middle, but not by a lot. And just overall, it has a dynamic, poppy flex, and it's easier to access than the Escape Plus. And we'll just take a look at that really quick here. You can see it just has, I just feel a lot more flex, less give with the Escape Plus, and more snap back. It just has a more dynamic pop, but everything's stiffer across the board just by a little bit. But if you compare it to the Thruster, especially with the soft nose, it just gives a little more easier in the tip and tail, but the center's about the same as the Escape, almost there with the Escape Plus, and this just has, you know, a much more bendy nose. Let me put this down here. This just has a much more bendy nose. But it was relatively easy for me to ollie with the Escape. I loved the Escape Plus a little bit more. I had to give it a little bit more to get it to snap, but it snapped so well that it was worth the extra effort. And the Thruster's really easy to get to pop. I think out of all of them, I like that the best because it just has a lot of pop, but it didn't take as much work. But all three of these are camber boards. They need a little more work to get them to pop. And the Escape could butter okay, but I didn't feel like I was really shining when I leaned into the nose or tail to butter. I liked the Thruster a lot better, and the Escape Plus a little less when it comes to buttering, but more when it comes to ollieing. And this overall flex personality in all conditions really does well in uneven snow. It has a little bit less pop, so then it goes over kind of micro bumpy and uneven snow a little better. I just didn't feel like it was as bucky and bouncy as the Escape Plus. But let me put it this way, this isn't your typical Plus board. The Escape Plus did great in uneven snow. And of the two, I think I like this a little bit better, but it comes with a higher price point. I could ride the Escape Plus all day, and that's cool for a Plus board. So it's not like a massive difference. I definitely felt it, especially, you know, just doing same day tests all the time, but it wasn't terrible. It's not like most Plus boards where it's like, oh yeah, you want to be on something else. And the Thruster, that's there with the Escape, very good in all conditions, and felt like it had that balance between these two where it has almost the pop of the Escape Plus, but still that like easy feel, that just that easy, more rubbery feel in uneven snow that you really appreciate. But all three are great all conditions rides, and it just comes down to personal preference. And when it comes to pointing it, yeah, I think I like the Escape Plus more in terms of dampness, but I liked that slightly wider nose and tail of the Thruster. For some reason, I felt the most comfortable on that. But the Escape is no slouch and did a good job in terms of pointing it, and you can get some really good mountain speed with all three of these. These are above that average mountain speed for all mountain boards. They're right there with a lot of like true tapered directional freeride boards that are stiffer and that are as stiff and really like to point it. When it comes to base glide, I would say Escape Plus and Thruster definitely felt better, but this wasn't terrible, and it's not bad for this price point. When it comes to turning and carving, all three of these boards were so satisfying. The full camber thing, or almost full camber with a spoon nose, all three of these were just great. They just really have that old school full camber spring. you're definitely sacrificing forgiveness. These are not forgiving boards. These will mess you up if you get off your game. But I really enjoyed it and just had so much fun turning on the Escape. And I liked just this balanced side cut and how easy it was to just do all kinds of turns. I could get a little more pointy, a little more down the line, and just make longer drawn out S-turns. And then get into more across the groomer carves, and then circle carve at the bottom. It was fine. But overall, a very fun turning experience, and I love full camber spring out of any kind of radius turn you want to make with this. Yeah, the Escape Plus had a little more pop, a little more spring, so did the thruster, but all three were really fun. Now when it comes to powder, this was probably the biggest letdown for me out of all three of these, but it's still not bad for full camber, and there's a decent amount of setback on board, but you're looking at 5x2 inserts versus 6x2 for the others per foot. And in same day comparisons in powder, the Escape just didn't quite hang with these boards. And these boards are good, but they're not great. The thruster had the best turning experience because of the lifted sides of the nose. So while it floated a little better, it only just by a little bit than the Escape, it just turned better and felt better in powder. It felt more fun in powder. So if you like that camber feel, but you want a better turning experience in powder, you want the thruster, but you're gonna pay more for that, I think. The Escape Plus is definitely better floating than the Escape. But all three of these boards weren't quite as good as some all-mountain boards, even with less setback on board, because they had early rise in the nose and sometimes the tail. They just do a little better than this, but for full camber, not bad. Now when it comes to switch riding, I really liked all these boards riding switch. I barely felt the taper, or not at all, when riding switch. And while I'm not totally centered on board riding off reference on groomers, it felt very, very doable switch, and it was super fun. This is a great board for hitting the pipe and kickers. Maybe not the best jibber, but overall a fun, go big kind of park experience at a reasonable price. So overall, I thought the Escape was really fun. I don't think it's going to have a wide appeal to a lot of riders, but if you're an advanced to expert rider, you like that old school technical camber feel, you might really like this because it's at a very reasonable price point. Giving advice on YouTube is very difficult because I need a lot of info from you to actually help. So if you want real advice, fill out the Me Harmony profile in the link below so I can help you properly.